Welcome, everyone. Tilka and I are so thrilled that you have all joined us for this landmark event. We hope we have the opportunity to meet each and every one of you today. Well, maybe not today, over the course of the next few days. We want to really thank you for supporting us in this adventure. As the first of its kind, you know, we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants, but you have all affirmed just how much this is something that is needed and wanted. And I just can't thank you enough for that. Before I go on, I would like to acknowledge my gratitude for this land where I live and work. This is traditional Nooksack territory.
I'm not hearing anything, or just little.
It was never ceded to the U.S. government, and the loss of traditional hunting, fishing, and gathering territory all but devastated the Nooksack tribe. It was through the efforts of one man and his wife in the 1960s and 70s that federal recognition was finally granted, along with exactly 1 acre of land that is designated the Nooksack Reservation. It is with gratitude that I acknowledge the history, customs, and bounty of the land and the traditional people here. So, moving on. For more than 20 years, I've had a dream of bringing people together from around the world, backgrounds, to create a pigment community, a global pigment community. I worked alone for many years researching pigments, and I really lamented not having other people to talk to and learn from. So this symposium is the result of that dream and my objective to bring everybody together so that we can learn from each other and support each other, collaborate on projects, collaborate on educating people and learning. I think that pigment people are all kindred. We feel a kinship and a camaraderie with others who drag home huge plastic bags of dirt. You know, all fill our pockets with rocks, and we can all spend endless hours oohing and awing over a pile of soil. What I don't understand is why doesn't everyone like dirt and rocks and mud the way we do? Well, I actually know 2 women who do love dirt and rocks and muds as much as I do, and that's Heidi Gustafson and Telka Elkins. They have been my lifeblood the last few months organizing this. They're my co-organizers, and they are 2 of the best friends anybody could ever hope for. So I would like to have you welcome Telka. She's going to say a few words, and when she's done, Heidi will take over, and then they'll pass it back to me. Thank you. Okay, so Heidi's up first because Tilka's having technical difficulties.
Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you too, and thank you, Melanie. That was a beautiful introduction. I just don't have a lot to say. I just want to second what Melanie said. I'm so glad we're all here to be joining and figuring out what pigments mean to all of us and how to work with them and how to continue to bring them up into the level of consciousness of the general public, perhaps. And just excited to hear everyone's talks and stories, their own personal connections with pigments, and share some of mine over the days. And hopefully Tilka's going to pop on here and say thank you too. So just enjoy, and hopefully you can explore this portal. I know it might be a little unfamiliar to some of you, but there's a lot of opportunity for dialogue and talking with each other. There's going to be breakout rooms where we can engage and see each other. And there's also a lot of recordings that our friends have made that are available anytime. If you just want to, it's the middle of the night and you miss us, you can turn it on anytime. If Tilka can't join us, we're going to move back and hopefully have Sabine do a poem. But oh, looks like Tilka joined us. So here's Tilka. She's also gonna say a little something. And thanks for being here.
A little connectivity. So great. This I will read a quick I wrote last night. Day we are in the essence of a blooming of connection and still ever for our of the planet place. We stewards, visionary poet scientists are growing I share about all of about life and the firm our feet. Thank you. So many and new together. So thank you.
And if for some reason you couldn't hear that, it was a little garbled on my end. I think what Tilka was saying was, we're all magical, and thank you for being here too. So we might have her say a little bit more later.
I really appreciate everything that you said. I think that you have encapsulated, what we're here for and what we're about. We have an amazing woman coming on next. She wrote a poem a few months back titled Dear Pigments, a love letter, and posted it on Instagram and emailed it to some of us. Sabine's been working with pigments for a while. She has an art store, and she discovered pigments through wanting to use natural materials in her art store. I just kind of blipped. The poem Dear Pigments is a very eloquent and evocative poem. And it will start this event off on the right note. Sabine's words will resonate with everyone, drawing us into the pigment world and reminding us all why we're here. It's about pigments, our love of pigments in all their wild and inspiring beauty. Please welcome the incomparable Sabine Pinon.
Okay, so there it is. Sorry, yeah, I have to get out of that now, I suppose. And play. Can you see it?
No.
No, but what can I do? Because it was up, so it's bizarre.
Yeah.
We're having a little bit of technical
Our tech guy.
difficulties. Yeah, just a moment here. Okay. Thank you everyone for your patience. We're experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties. We're going to get Sabine here in just a moment.
Well, it's got a big red button, and the only possibility is to stop sharing. So do you want me to just try again all over? Can you see it? Can you see anything?
I am not currently seeing the screen share, unfortunately, no.
What should I do then? Maybe down. Mhm. Yeah. So, am I live? Okay. Lovely. Sorry, everybody. Okay, there we go. Dear Pigment, I thought I would give you an update of where I am right now. As you might have understood from all my probing, I've been researching you for quite some years. And knowing already so many things about you, I was even reluctant to choose you as my material of choice. Not that I don't love you. Yet, after doing so, something quite interesting happened. It's simple, really, but quite revolutionary to me. And it took perhaps the better part of the first term at City Guilds to really understand that knowing about pigments versus keeping company with pigments and thinking about them with concern, as you perhaps would think of a loved one, are quite different things. Complementary and overlapping for sure, but processes of a different nature. Also, the shift from the study of you, sorry, towards me, or rather my exploration of you, is bringing an engagement and a happiness I am quite sure Aristotle would have approved of, and hopefully so could you. It has been an intellectual research for sorts using the 88 pigments I wanted for my timeline. All of you had to be not only historically the most relevant ones, but also to have been used as art pigments. Then it turned into detective work as I tried to source you and make sure I had the genuine you I wanted in my collection. You have to admit, working at Cornelissen and helping them sort out 100 years of archive pigments has proven a most fortuitous source, as some of you are now so rare and even obsolete. In their store and here in the studio, oops, oops. In their store and here in the studio, while I indulge in opening jar upon jar containing you, I take time to admire, to smell the pink and write down my feelings. Sometimes you are so airy that a little twirl of evanescence seems to come out of the package or the jar as I twist the cap. I feel then I'm releasing some sort of magical spirit. But even when that doesn't happen, always the pure color that you are takes my breath away. I know some of you are more costly commodities than others, resulting in more expensive series and paints, for example. But all of you are, in my eyes, equally captivating and valuable. My fingers learn from you too, and I enjoy the varied caresses I receive. Some of my tribe are so silky, ever so fine, that I'm reminded of rice powder. It brings up memories of some of my grandmother's friends I didn't enjoy kissing at all. While some of you are really coarse, glassy, or gritty, and more evocative of barefoot walks on English beaches. Heavy, virtually weightless, and rarely, I must admit, even smelly. Most certainly, each one of you has attitude. Then I put you to the binder test, and whilst I'm mulling you on the slab to turn you into paint, some of you seem totally reluctant. Not pointing the finger, but dragon's blood and charcoal are truly difficult, while others are simply bending over to please me, top marks given to lead white. And whilst I knew painters were devastated to give it up, I now understand why. Later, as you well know, our conversation continues while I paint in your company. You still talk color to me then, but also opacity, transparency, granulation, dispersion, texture. And while circles and stripes come to life under my brush, I hear you, but also daydream of the foreign lands where you come from, of civilizations long gone, of artworks and artists I know have used you. Thinking of you as opposed to knowing things about you also mean that most of the time you're still on my mind. As I sit in the lavender patch at Vauxhall Gardens, I let myself dream that all those creation myths of man made out of clay, red ochre, be true, for example. And so on that whim, I search and find that quite a few respectable scientists are proposing very serious models for the origin of life using clay as a plausible mechanism. And if so, could these molecules at the origin of life have somehow transmitted a DNA memory of their origins to the first humans so far down the chain? Is that even possible? I know the Lord Goth, who formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, often gets the credit for it. And of course, don't know who should receive the accolade, but certainly if it was her, she chose a good name for that first one who would walk Adamah, the earth in Hebrew, as Adam is a generic noun in Hebrew, meaning in fact mankind, and synonymous with to be red. Perhaps humans are offsprings of hematite, the beautiful bloodstone with which they share iron, oxygen, and the color red inside. The same red of ochres, the same red as the stick of pure pigment found in a South African cave, incised some 70,000 years ago by a shaman or a midwife, perhaps, a fellow color worshipper for sure. The same red found on ceremonial masks, in initiation circles, on the ground, on the walls of caves, on our skins, and all the way into burial grounds, on our bones. Do you know, Ancient One, the answer to these esoteric questions? Actually, I'm happy you keep that secret, if you want. As for your name, dear Oka, in my native tongue from which in English you came, we pronounce you ochre, and I like it better, as I can virtually hear in this kh the ochre pigment being separated from the sand and other earthy bits that holds it together as a colorful mass. The Old French came from the Latin ochra, ochre in Greek from ochros, meaning pale yellow. Amusingly enough, but in accordance with its origins, most people would probably think color too rather than pigment, material I mean, when they hear ochre. That hue is not well defined though, from perhaps not a pale yellow, but a rather muted, dull mid-tone one to even some dark mustardy ones. Yet all of these colors were produced by ochres. At first, pigments were not manufactured, of course, but gathered. Today's term would be mined, but I find it hard to apply that to Neolithic men and women. And yet, all those moons ago, these early alchemists understood how to rival with nature and dehydrate yellow ochre, the most common one, in order to obtain what always had our preference, the red one. Ochres are abundant on planet Earth, and yet much rarer are those places that contain quality pigment, i.e., a high ratio of color to sand. As a result, these were always considered very sacred, often kept secret, and used only for women's business ceremonies, men's initiation practices, and the like. Artists who forage and use natural pigments today are very aware that this practice is in line with that of the land custodians of old. Doing this responsibly, they are also revering the unique place where these ochres were found. For many, they share that this process grounds their works and gives them a potent sense of belonging. I, who come perhaps from too many lands, really envy them. As time went on, we moved away from these austere pigments, as Pliny called them, favoring those in his other classification, the florid ones. These adjectives might make us smile today, and yet most recently I began thinking about one of our most established pigment classification, wondering if it was time to rethink the distinction between natural and artificial. Because why is it that an ochre which has been mined, ground, sieved, washed, levigated, pulverized, roasted, packaged, and shipped to the other side of the world be considered more natural than a combination of mercury and sulfur, creating a black form of mercury sulfide, which once pulverized and sublimated by intense heating turns into a divine vermilion, a pigment most certainly regarded as artificial, while both its elements are natural too, if toxic, and the pigment produced with quite a similar process. Okay, where did it freeze? Do I have to start again? Okay. It's back again? Yeah, okay. Now, of course, I'm beginning to wonder if the term natural would not be best suited for those untouched pigments still part of landscape or buried deep in the belly of Mother Earth. If artificial, perhaps not, but refined or processed by men would not better suit all the others, in fact. I'm still mulling over this one, yet think the next frontier I might need to confront will logically be organic versus inorganic. Have you noticed, dear one, that some paint companies label these days the resulting man-made product rather than your original nature, turning some of your tribe, ivory black, for example, from a natural organic into an inorganic synthetic pigment? Not that you probably care about our human classifications. Still, if one of these days some scientists manage to prove that we indeed come from red ochre, wouldn't that be enchanted materialism indeed? And yes, we found increasingly sophisticated ways to produce, you dear friend, and most of them pretty cruel, you must admit. Our ruthless quest for colors we could possess and use has even resulted in 2 huge famines, working slaves or cheap labor in arsenic, lead, or cobalt mines, driving to extinction the murex, a sea snail with purple dye, feeding poor Indian cows nothing but mango leaves to collect their unhealthy acid urine. But then it turned into such a beautiful deep yellow orange. In short, we stopped at nothing, and all that to produce what? Because, sorry if this comes as a surprise to you, but what are you? Just a little rock, a pile of little rocks, tiny particles really, who absorb most of the color of the light and bounce back to our retinas the wavelengths it cannot absorb. Our retinas compute this information, forward it to our gray matter, which, and this is something of a miracle, translates it to us into, wow, what a beautiful orange. But you're not orange, not really. So who are you if you're not color, nor give color, which you do not possess, nor strictly speaking produce color? We experience you as such, though, and go to extreme lengths in order to obtain the precious piles of dusty colorless particles you are. But in fact, you might be better defined as some sort of ready-made portable surface, a surface which has the capacity of creating other colorless surfaces, whose perceived colors are now predictable, which is helpful, I suppose. But would you be happy to be defined as a passive place, a state in which you would be only the surface of any and everything? Or would you be more content we think of you as an active participant on which a reaction happens, which would probably force us to change the initial question from what are you, dear pigment, to when are you? I do hope that by now you have realized how much you have pigmented my life and the extent of my adoration and gratitude. So I can only hope that you take no offense at this new status of yours. Yes, you've lost your color, never had one really. But personally, I don't experience you like that, of course. And so find you all the more dynamic and intriguing, really, for enacting this color paradox. In fact, it expands for me the possibles. A geologist, chemist, archaeologist, or even an artist will see new worlds and options I do not. But my intuition tells me the door, which is unique to me, is slowly materializing, and so I'm holding my breath. Wishing us a long life of discoveries together, I remain yours truly, Sabine.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Sabine. I really love that poem. You hit so many points that resonate with me, and it feels like, you know, we've walked in the same path with dealing with pigments. So thank you very much for sharing.
I'm not seeing Melanie.
Pardon me? Okay, so moving on.
I can't hear her either.
Bright Earth, The Invention of Color is likely the most read book on the subject of pigments today. We're fortunate to have the author of Bright Earth, Dr. Philip Ball, as our keynote speaker for the symposium. Philip has written many books and articles that span a diverse collection of subjects. But for many of us, Bright Earth is a reliable old friend. I personally have worn out 3 copies. And I often feel that Philip is an old friend too. A chemist and physicist by training, Philip uses that expertise to delve into and elucidate diverse subjects. Today, he will talk about the history of natural pigments and their intersection with synthetic pigments. Are they really different? And what is the relevance of those differences today when the natural balance is so deeply out of true? Everyone, please welcome Dr. Philip Ball. Oh, okay. So leave.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Melanie has jumped over to that keynote presentation. You're all able to step over there and join Philip in the next session. Each session is its own little space, so you will want to jump between them. They won't flow from one to the next in the same room. So thank you, everyone.